Welcome to the Real Fast Spanish Tips podcast. If you're interested in achieving a conversational level in Spanish and want to learn more, check out realfastspanish.com. Andrew Barr here. Welcome to episode 1 of the Real Fast Spanish Tips podcast. Before I get into today's episode, I'm just going to give you a quick background. I've been learning Spanish now for about 6 years. I'm based in Melbourne, Australia, which puts me at about 7,000 miles from the nearest Spanish-speaking country. Now, I'm sure you can imagine learning Spanish at long distance is quite a challenge, but what I'm hoping to do with you is share some of the things that have worked for me and some of the things that haven't. I have a huge passion for learning Spanish. I have a passion for learning in general, and I also have a passion for helping others. So, how am I planning on helping you, and what's this podcast going to be about? Well, in general, Real Fast Spanish is a website now I've been working on since last year. And everything I do on the website, this podcast, anything that I create is about this one idea. And that's about getting to a conversational level of Spanish as fast as possible. So who might this be for? Well, if you're going on a trip, maybe I have a few students that have just moved to Spain and they need help with their Spanish really fast. Maybe you have a significant other that you're trying to impress. Whatever the reason, a lot of people are looking for this idea of learning Spanish as quickly as possible for whatever purpose they may be. Now, in order to do that, there are a few things along the way that you need to know which aren't purely based on Spanish alone. There are a few things that you need to learn, skills that you need to develop that can help you get to a language faster than you thought possible. So the first 3 episodes are going to be around the 3 Ds, what I refer to as the 3 Ds of language learning. And in the 4th episode, I'm going to talk about a concept called conversation hacking. So look out for that. But before I get into those, I'm just going to start with this idea of fluency. Now, if you ask me, am I fluent in Spanish? It's a really interesting question. And to be honest with you, I wouldn't really know what the answer is. I've asked others. I said, what do you think? You've heard me speak Spanish. Do you think I'm fluent in Spanish? Well, it depends on the person I'm speaking with to whether I get an answer of yes or no. Now, this is really interesting. And this is the essence of today's episode. In this episode, and the very, very, very first skill that I think any language learner needs is this idea of definition. So when I'm talking definition, we're talking about what do you define as what you're setting out to achieve. Now, a lot of people might just say, straight off the bat, well, I'm planning on being fluent in Spanish. But I'd ask you to define exactly what that means. When I speak to a lot of language students, a lot of people have different ideas. Some might mean fluency means absolute perfection. Others might say, oh, well, I just want to be able to converse. My advice would be to stop using the word fluency altogether. Instead, have a look at other ways you can define what you're trying to set about. So if you ask any of my friends, a lot of them would say that I'm a bit of a nerd when it comes to goal setting, but I think that's okay. You may have heard of the SMART framework, which is a framework which people use to try and get people to set better goals. Now, SMART is an acronym for the goal should be specific, it should be measurable. The T stands for time related, and the two letters in the middle, which are for A and R. When you actually do a Google search, you'll find lots of different words that represent what the A and the R are supposed to be, which is somewhat ironic because it's supposed to help with definition. But some people say that the A part of SMART should be assignable, meaning someone should be able to assign the goal. Maybe this is used in a corporate context. The next one is attainable. The next A is actionable or action-orientated. The R is realistic, relevant, and recorded. Now, if you ask me to break these down, I'd say that recorded is quite similar to measurable. Realistic is similar to attainable. Instead, I'd say don't worry at all about the SMART framework, but just really think about the first part of it, which is that the goal is specific and just well defined. It's critical that you have a good definition of what you're actually trying to achieve. So I've got a quote here from Einstein obviously one of the best thinkers of our time. But he said, if I had an hour to solve a problem, my life depended on the solution. I would spend the first 55 minutes determining the proper question to ask. For once I know the proper question, I could solve the problem in less than 5 minutes. So Einstein knew the value of definition, and hopefully you're starting to get a picture of where I'm coming from. There's another really cool test for helping you understand what I mean by definition of the power of being able to define things well. Now, when I first did this, well, let me go through the exercise first. So wherever you are right now, wherever you're listening to the podcast, what I want you to do is I want you to, now if you're driving a car, this may not work, but you can pull over or whatever you can do, just get in a position and have a look around the room. And what I want you to look for is everything that is the color red. Now I'm going to give you a couple of seconds. See if you have to look around. I'm looking around the room where I am right now. I can see a book on the table, which is the color red. I can see a few pieces of clothing, which are the color red. There's a few things around the room. Take a couple of seconds, see how many you can get. Then what I'm going to ask you to do is close your eyes. Again, obviously, if you're in a position where closing your eyes will put you in danger, don't do it. But if you're sitting down somewhere listening to this podcast, close your eyes. So you've got all those things that are color red. Now what I'm going to do when you've got your eyes closed, I want you to start to list everything in the room that's the color gray. Now, the first time I did this exercise, I realized how difficult it is. And if you're anything like me, you're probably really struggling to find things that are gray. But you may still be able to list more things that are red than you had when you had your eyes open. Now, what you've done here is you've defined a really good problem for your brain. You've said to your brain, you said, I want to find all the things in this room that are red. You've locked the definition of the problem in, and your brain's gone to work solving that problem for you. Then when I said close your eyes and told you a different problem, your brain thought, hang on a minute, am I working on this red problem or I'm now working on this grey problem? I'm a little bit confused, and now I can't even see the room, so I don't even know how I'm supposed to do this. The same thing happens when you define your goals in general, but specifically when it comes to learning language. So someone might start off by saying, how can I be fluent in a second language? Now, obviously, this isn't a great goal because you don't even know what language you're starting at. So maybe the next step you take is to say, how can I be fluent in Spanish? Obviously, much better than how can I be fluent in a second language, but it's still not well defined. The challenge I would put to you, and the challenge I put to all my students that come to Real Fast Spanish is, how can I get to a point that I can hold a conversation in Spanish for 30 minutes? And that's it. Once you get to that point of being able to hold a conversation for 30 minutes, Spanish will open right up for you, and it will get a lot easier. And everything from that point on will be what I would call levels of perfection, really. You can improve your grammar, you can improve your pronunciation, you can improve your vocab. But from this point that you can hold a conversation for 30 minutes, it's just levels of ability, levels of fluency, if you will. But again, I'm going to try and avoid using this word. So this episode is going to be at realfastspanish.com/definition. You'll be able to get all the show notes there. And if you have any questions, you can leave a question. So I'd love to know. Maybe you could head over to the blog and let me know. What are you defining as your goals? How can you make the definitions better? Think back to the problem of finding the things in the room that are red. How can you do this same thing with your Spanish to help get you to a point that's conversational? That ends today's episode. Thanks again for listening, and I'll speak to you soon.